Hey, it's Antonia Dodge and Joel Mark Witt with Personality Hacker. We're continuing our INTx Insights series. We're actually in
spring break.
Yeah, we're in spring break. We're still recording videos, and we're actually at a very cool Disney resort right now. If you can kind of see.
We're not staying here.
No.
We hacked into it.
We did. We made friends with people who are giving us access to some pretty cool stuff. Anyway, so let's talk about INTx, INTJs and INTPs as it relates to how busy they are. How busy are you as an INTJ or an INTP? A lot of times will depend on the factor of whether or not you feel inspired to be busy. And what can happen for people that are not of these two types is they can see what appears to be relative inactivity and mischaracterize, misattribute, just misunderstand what's going on. Now, again, INTJs and INTPs have two different cognitive function stacks or car models. And so because of that, the reasons they do things might appear to be, or what they're doing might appear to be very similar, but the reasons for the behavior are quite different. And in this case, INTJs and INTPs both have a tendency to act only when they need to be acting. And the reason for this is that INTJs, well, the difference in the two styles is INTJs need to conserve a lot of energy because their driver process or dominant process is introverted intuition, or what we call perspectives. This is a process that has infinite cerebral energy, like they can think almost indefinitely, but has very limited physical energy. So what ends up happening with INTJs is that they end up doing a lot of future pacing, a lot of planning. That whole concept of measure twice, cut once very much appeals to the people of this type. And because they need to conserve physical energy, it can appear to people in the outside world that they need to get into action, they need to get busy, and they're just not doing that. And why aren't they doing that? They should be out engaging more. Generally, the reason why is because they're trying to conserve that physical energy, so when they actually do take an action, they don't have to go back and repeat it because they've made a mistake. And if they made a mistake, they want it to be very small so that the amount of energy that needs to go into repair is also quite small. So for INTJs, one of the reasons why they don't jump into action as much is because they are trying to conserve their physical energy. Now, INTPs, on the other hand, actually have more physical energy than INTJs do, but they deal with a lack of motivation because their driver process is introverted thinking, or what we call accuracy. Introverted thinking is a subjective, evaluative process, meaning that they're trying to figure out what makes sense to them. They're trying to make actions that strike them on a subjective level as an important action to take. And if you're always looking at the world in terms of what makes sense, what doesn't, what is good data, what's bad data, unfortunately, the world throws a lot of absurdities at you. And so it makes it difficult for people who use the process of introverted thinking or accuracy to get motivated by things because, well, it's all just sort of so absurd anyway. Why should I do that? That doesn't make any sense, is a comment that is not uncommon for INTPs. So INTPs have a tendency to not get into action as much, not because they're conserving energy, but simply because they're unmotivated. Nothing really is appealing to them. It doesn't really make sense to take action. Now, for both of these types, extroverted behaviors, right, taking action, is the thing they need to be doing in order to move the needle. But unfortunately, just go take action is not a very appealing message to either of these types, because both INT types, INTPs and INTJs, need to have the reasons why fully illustrated. They don't just take information on faith. They fully vet all of their information and determine whether or not that's something that strikes them as meaningful, as making sense, as something that, yeah, okay, I can see why that should be the case. So unfortunately, the message that both types actually need, which is to get into action, doesn't always carry with it the explanation for why. The deeper dive into this not just being something that you need to trust the outside world's messaging to you, right? Because there's a lot of information that gets thrown around that isn't trustworthy. So it's not something you should just take on faith or trust, yeah, get into action. But actually there's cognitive reasons why this is a good piece of information or a good piece of advice. However, again, because they're two different types, the extroverted activity or getting into action that you need to do is very different. for INTJs, because their co-pilot process is extroverted thinking, or what we call effectiveness, then the actions that need to be taken are ones that need to be measured, ones that need to be looking for pass-fail criteria, to be actually completing projects and to be moving the needle. Whereas for INTPs, because their extroverted process or co-pilot is extroverted intuition, or what we call exploration, then the actions that they need to be taking are not metered at all. They should be more speculative. They need to be intuitive and exploratory. They need to simply be, in some ways, throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And that way, it's not so much about energy management. Of course, we've already talked about INTPs. It's more about motivation. That gives them back their joie de vivre. The exploration process is optimistic and happy and cheerful. And so getting outside into the outside world for an INTP, using specifically the exploration process, it makes sense because it makes them happier to do so. It makes them feel better about the activities that they're taking. Whereas with an INTJ, getting into the effectiveness process, it satisfies their need for measurements to make sure that what they're doing is the right thing. Now, with effectiveness, even though it is more about moving the needle and pass-fail criteria, there is still a part of effectiveness that has an ability to pivot. If what a person is doing is not working, it's the effectiveness process that's measuring that and determining it, and then it's going to have a little bit of flexibility in it. And the extroverted process for INTPs of exploration, even though it is very exploratory and throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, it's still data collection. It's still looking for all the things that actually are working. It's looking for patterns in the outside world that can't be simply speculated on by staying in your room and reading, but actually must be physically explored, must actually be something that is being picked up with the senses and then determined which patterns are coming from it. So for both INTJs and INTPs, there is a tendency to not get into action, but it's for completely different reasons. And depending upon which type you are, you're going to want to pursue the extroverted process that is native to your mind wiring, and find the rewards that come from it. You got something to add?
Make a quick comment.
Okay,
about,
hold on. There we go.
You mentioned being busy at the very beginning, and then you change it to action later on. And that busyness, sometimes you can mistake like research, learning a lot more, spending time online. That can be considered getting into action in your mind, maybe as an INTJ or INTP, and I don't think that's what we're talking about. More learning isn't necessarily getting into action. It could be, it can be, especially for INTPs, but it's not so much cerebral learning. It's about going out and messing with your environment, about learning things that maybe you couldn't learn behind a computer screen or just on your own reading. It's about actually taking action in the outer world for both types. But in particular for INTPs, it's not about just getting busy and doing more research. I just want to make that quick distinction, because I know some INTP friends of mine, when I talk to them about this, they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally taking action. I'm doing tons of stuff. I'm doing research. I can do that all on my own at home. And I'm like, no, you've got to go out. You have to go out and push buttons in the outer world. You've got to push the limits to get some of this feedback, especially for you INTPs. I think INTJs need this as well, but for INTPs in particular. So I just want to make that quick comment.
Yeah, I think whenever anything feels like you've accomplished something, but you didn't actually physically get in the outside world and do it, it's almost like a snack when you need a nourishing meal, right? Doing little things here and there are fine to get you going or get you started, but when it actually comes to real personal development and growth, you're gonna have to get outside yourself. You're gonna have to actually get out into the extroverted world and get the extroverted real world feedback that's so crucial to actually being in one of those processes or functions. All right, anything more?
That's it.
All right, so that is your INTx Insights video for today. And remember, INTx Unleashed is currently available in the catalog, so if you want to check it out at personalityhacker.com/INTx, please feel free to do so and leave a comment. What is preventing you from taking action? And do you think that getting into your extroverted process that is native to whether or not you're an INTJ or an INTP is the thing that will move the needle for you? Let us know. Talk to you later at the next INTx Insights. Have fun on spring break!